All right, Huskies, here is chapter 11, Apple Pie. The next morning was very cold. Benny did not want to get up at all. No, he said, it is so cold that I'm going to go get back in bed. Henry looked out at the ocean. I have an idea, he said. It's too cold outside today. Let's all stay inside and paint our birds. Fine, agreed Jessie. I'll light the stove and we'll shut the barn door. It will soon be warm. In spite of what he had said earlier about staying in bed, Benny opened the swinging door of his room and came out wearing his red sweater. He was carrying the little toy boat which was in the package his grandfather had given him. I like my new boat, said Benny proudly. Let's make it go, Henry. Put it in that pail of water, Benny, said Henry. You play with your boat while we get ready to work. The girls helped Henry put the table in the corner under the window. Then Jessie brought the bird books and some heavy paper. I'm going to use my new pen, said Violet. Grandfather knew that I needed a new one. He knew I wanted a set of things like this to fix cuts, said Henry. It will be handy to have when we go on picnics or exploring. Grandfather had given Jessie a set of 6 cooking spoons. Are you going to use your new spoons today, Jessie? Asked Violet. I might, said Jessie. I have a good idea for dinner this noon. I think you'll like it, but I won't tell you what it is until we have finished painting the birds. Let's get to work then, cried Henry. I'll cut out paper birds and you girls color them. Cut out a picture of every bird we have seen, said Jessie. The bird book tells us all the names. The children worked all morning. Suddenly, Benny said, Henry, I think Joe ought to have stayed here to see Grandfather. I think so too, said Henry. It seems very strange, said Violet, for him to go off without telling us. We'll ask him when he comes back, said Jessie. And now I'll tell you my surprise for dinner. I am going to make an apple pie. Bet you've never made a pie, said Henry, looking up. No, said Jessie, but I'm going to now. She took a pan of very small green apples out of the cupboard. Where did you get them? Asked Benny. Near the yellow house, said Jessie. There are 2 apple trees there. I'll get them ready, said Violet. Good. And Henry, won't you smooth off one of those boards for a pie board? Jessie washed the new board. Then she picked up the big, empty green bottle. This is my rolling pin, she said. I am going to try to make some good pie crust. So over and over she rolled the crust. She put some butter on it and rolled it out again. But when Jessie put the bottom crust in the pan, the crust was not big enough. Put a patch in it, said Benny. Jessie took a little more crust and smoothed it over the edges of the pan with her finger. So look right there, Benny's watching her. She's rolling out the pie crust, isn't she? That sounds fun. This is going to be a very deep pie, she said, and there will be lots of apples in it. Benny watched Jessie roll out the top crust. Make it big enough this time, Jessie, he said. There are lots of apples. Jessie rolled the top crust a little thinner. It was just right. When the pie was in the oven, she began to boil some sugar and water in the saucepan. What's that for? Asked Henry. He began to take the things off the table. Just wait, said Jessie. I think it's going to be the best thing about this pie. You see, there isn't any sugar in the pie yet, so there is no juice to boil over. Why don't you get out the bread and milk and set the table? Then everything else will be ready when the pie is done. When the crust was nice and brown, Jessie took the pie out of the oven. She lifted up the top crust with a knife and carefully poured the hot juice over the apples. Then she let down the crust again. Just as Jessie was about to cut the pie into 4 pieces, there was a knock on the barn door. Who in the world can that be? Cried Henry. He was so surprised that he almost dropped his cup. When Henry opened the door, he was even more surprised to see a tall man standing there. I'm sorry, said the stranger, but I went to the fisherman's hut and nobody was home. Won't you come in? Asked Jessie. Thank you. It is a cold day, said the man with a smile. "Oh, I see that you are about to have dinner. I'll just stay long enough to ask you something." "Won't you sit down?" said Henry. "Thank you. My name is Browning," he said as he sat down in the company chair. "A young man who went exploring for me last year has been lost. I heard that he was dead. Then later I heard that he was living on the Alden Island. This is the Alden Island, isn't it?" "Yes," said Henry, "but there is nobody on the island but Captain Daniel and his friend Joe." "Who is Captain Daniel?" asked Mr. Browning. "Oh, did I say that? I'm so sorry." "Who is Captain Daniel?" asked Mr. Browning. "Oh, Captain Daniel is old," said Henry. "And I'm sure he never went exploring. He has been with my grandfather for years." "How about his friend Joe?" asked the man. "He's nice. He's been my best friend in all the world," said Benny proudly. "All but Jessie, and maybe Watch, and Captain Daniel, and of course Violet and Henry and my grandfather." "You have a lot of best friends," said the man, laughing. "Tell me, what color are Joe's eyes and hair?" "He has brown hair and brown eyes," said Benny, "and he has a violin." "I don't think he is the one I know then," said the man. "I never heard that he played the violin. Just the same, I should like to see your Joe." "Won't you wait for him? He is sure to come back soon," said Jessie. "Why don't you stay for dinner and help us eat our first apple pie?" The man looked at the big pie and said, "If you are sure there will be enough, I think I will." So the pie was cut into 5 pieces. Violet quietly got an extra cup of milk and set another place, and the stranger sat down to the strange dinner. "When I look at that pie," said Mr. Browning, "my mouth fills up with water." And certainly everyone was watching Jessie as she took out the big, juicy pieces. "Milk seems to go with apple pie," said Henry. "I never knew pie could be so delicious," said Mr. Browning when dinner was over. "But now, if I may, I think I will see if I can find Joe." "We think that Joe is more than a handyman," said Henry. "Joe knows everything in the world," said Benny. "He knows all about the flowers and the birds and the clamshells and the Indian things." So did you see right there how the author used a pattern to tell us what all he knew? It wasn't just that he knows everything. They actually used a pattern to give us more detail, just like you guys did in your writing yesterday. "Indian things," cried Mr. Browning. "It must be the very one. He was the head of a museum before he went away. I must see him." But Mr. Browning did not see Joe. Captain Daniel came back to the island without him. He said that Joe had gone away for a day or 2. That Joe is very mysterious, isn't he? "Is he coming back?" asked Benny, getting ready to howl. "Oh, yes," said Captain Daniel. "He will come back all right." When Mr. Browning left, he told Jessie that he was glad he came, for now he had met a girl who could make a wonderful apple pie with an old green bottle for a rolling pin. All right, chapter 12 is called The Picnic, and I'm really curious about Joe and where he is, and if he might be the mysterious man that Mr. Browning's talking about. Stay tuned and we'll find out. Bye, Huskies.